Hi, I'm Ariel, and welcome to the School of Print Design, a show where we teach you how to design print like a pro. School of Print Design is brought to you by Smartpress, so it's made by printers or designers. In fact, look. We're here on the actual print floor at Smartpress right now, in the middle of the action. World-class print is being made all around us, and on every episode of School of Print Design, we'll be sharing all this real print expertise with you. Today, we're going to teach you everything you need to know about paper stock for printing, so you can confidently make the best paper selections for your print design projects. Paper is one of the most important design decisions you'll make. It's the vehicle for your design. It's how your audience will experience your design, whether it's viewed hanging on a wall or in their hands. So you've got to get it right. In this episode, we'll teach you about paper stock, paper types, and paper weights. Then check out part 2 for all the details on paper finish, paper color, and texture. In printing, you'll hear the term stock or paper stock used constantly when talking about anything related to paper. But let's clarify what it really means. Paper stock refers to the base paper material, the actual physical sheet of paper used for printing. And it describes the entire paper specification, including its type, weight, color, and finish. So paper stock is your paper selection. When you see something like this, coated matte white 100-pound cover, that's a paper stock spec. Each part of the paper stock refers to a different characteristic of the paper. Coated matte equals finish, white equals color, 100-pound equals weight, and cover equals type. So let's break it down. A good place to start is with the paper type, which is also sometimes referred to as paper category. There are a ton of different types of paper, but in the North American printing industry, there are a handful of more conventional ones. These include newsprint, bond, text, cover, and index, to name a few. Each of these types of paper is manufactured differently for different purposes, and so they're good at different things. First, there's newsprint. When you hear newsprint, you'll think of newspapers and other inexpensive publications. It's thin, super lightweight, and has minimal chemical processing. It's highly absorbent and created for high-speed printing, but it's not so good for color fidelity or any print items that need to have any kind of longevity. Next is bond paper. What is bond paper? Well, it's what you know as copy paper. It was originally created for government forms, and it's used primarily for writing and office printing. Bond is very smooth, dense, and durable, but it's usually only manufactured in lighter weights. It's not made for printing photos and graphics. Now we have text paper. This is one of the most common types of paper you'll be dealing with in print design projects. It's light to medium weight, great for pages of books, magazines, and catalogs. Also popular for flyers and stationery. It's built for professional graphic and photo printing. And then there's cover paper, which you'll sometimes hear referred to as card or cardstock. Think of cover papers like text paper, just heavier weight. This is the kind of paper you'll want for book covers, business cards, postcards, brochures, mailers, even folders and light packaging. At Smartpress, this is the kind of paper we use for the majority of our print, marketing collateral, and small format print design projects. Last, we'll quickly touch on index papers. Index paper is manufactured to be an economical and durable paper for utility uses like index cards, file folders, and tickets. It's rigid and heavyweight, but it's not refined like a cover paper. While you can print on it, it isn't intended for fine graphic and image reproduction. So, the kind of print project you're designing will likely steer you immediately toward one of these types of papers. The key takeaways for designers about paper types are, first, simply choose a paper type that makes the most sense for your design project. These paper types are tried and true, so use them for the purpose they were manufactured for. And when it comes to print design, the majority of the time you'll be using text paper or cover paper. These papers have the best functional performance and print quality for design. Next, let's dive into paper weight. If you're finding this content helpful and want to be the first to see new episodes, like and subscribe to the Smartpress channel. Okay, back to paper. Now that you have the full scoop on the types of paper for printing, let's get into paper weights. Paper weight and thickness is one of the most critical aspects of a successful print piece. You've got to make sure the weight of the paper is appropriate for what you're designing, or you might create a transparent photo or a brochure that doesn't stay closed. In print design, you'll typically see paper weight or thickness being measured in 3 different ways: points, GSM, or pounds. First, let's cover points, or PT. Points don't actually refer to paper weight. They are a unit of measurement that gauges the thickness or caliper of a single sheet of paper in inches. And points are measured using a special tool called a micrometer. 1 point or 1 PT is equal to 1/1000th of an inch. So 14 PT is equal to 14 1,000ths or 0.014 inches. You also might hear the unit in mil in printing when talking about paper stock thickness. 1 mil and 1 point are equal. The only difference is that points are typically used when talking about paper, and the mil is used when talking about other materials like plastics. The good news is that the points are a consistent way to understand and compare thickness across any type of paper. However, thickness is not weight. Some paper can be thicker but actually weigh less than a dense paper. So, let's talk about weight. GSM is the standard way that the rest of the world measures paper weight. GSM stands for grams per square meter. It represents the weight of 1 square meter of a single sheet of paper in grams. Yep, it's that simple. Now for the fun part. Last, we'll cover pounds, which is the most common way to measure paper weight in the US. Unfortunately, pounds is almost the most convoluted and antiquated measurement of these 3 methods. But it is what it is. Until the US switches to GSM, which will probably never happen, us designers have to learn to use pounds. So let's break it down how it works. Remember the paper types we covered earlier? Each of them has a different base sheet size that is used to calculate its weight in pounds, which is shown as LB or the pound symbol. The pound weight you'll see shown in a paper stock spec represents the weight of a ream, which is 500 sheets of that paper in its base sheet size. This is also called its basis weight. So if we take a look at our example paper stock again, notice that it says 100-pound cover. That means that its paper type is cover, and the cover paper has a base sheet size of 20 by 26 inches. So 500 sheets of this paper in a 20 by 26 inch size weighs 100 pounds. Okay, so not bad, right? Well, here's the confusing part. Remember that each paper type has a different base sheet size. Here's a visual of what that looks like. Because of the differences in these sheet sizes, there is no easy way to compare the weight of one type of paper to another. For example, 100-pound text paper is lighter than 100-pound cover paper because the base sheet size of text paper is so much bigger than cover sheets of that same weight rating. The most important thing you need to know is that if you're designing print in the United States, you're going to be using pounds for measuring paper weight. At the end of the day, the key is to simply understand that with all of these methods, more is more and less is less. Higher numbers mean thicker and denser paper, regardless of the paper type scale. So, now that you understand how paper weight is determined, let's talk about how to choose the right weights for our designs. Much of this decision comes down to preference, but there are some important factors to weigh. Feel, folding and lay flat, show through, and budget. This is the subjective part of paperweight selection. The tactile heaviness or rigidity of a print piece has a lot to do with how we feel and how we expect to feel when handling different print products. Understanding your desired outcome and how the paperweight correlates is the key. As an overall guideline, we should match the weight to the product use case, but lean to the heavier end of the typical weight ranges to get that premium feel. No one wants their design to feel cheap. For example, we all expect stationery to be somewhat lightweight and pliable. Letterheads typically weigh between 60 to 100-pound text, so lean toward that 100-pound text weight, but go too thick and your print won't feel like a letterhead anymore. With business cards, we expect them to be thicker and rigid. It's common for a business card to be at least an 80-pound cover. Getting your business cards to be a 110-pound cover or thicker will give it a more luxury feel. Next, let's take into account folding and lay flat. If you're designing a product that needs to fold, like a brochure or pamphlet, paperweight is a huge factor. In this case, performance should take precedent over feel. Choose a stock that feels too thin, and your product might feel cheap. Choose one that's too thick, and your product might not close properly. Brochures typically range between 80-pound text to 120-pound cover, and that's a pretty big range. For example, look at these 3 trifold brochures, printed in the following 3 weights. First, we have 80-pound text. Then, we have an 80-pound cover. And lastly, 120-pound cover. Now you'll see that the thickest paper does not fully close. The 2 lighter weight papers lay closed, but the middle weight is a bit thicker and will have a nicer feel. One really important thing to note with brochures is that many formats have multiple panels. As the panel count goes up, you'll have to decrease your weight to maintain a proper fold performance. For any brochure over 3 panels, like the ones we have here, you may want to consider a hard proof before placing a large order. Many booklet bindings are inherently lay-flat, like perfect bound and spiral coil. But the stapled binding in saddle stitch booklets, catalogs, and magazines requires similar considerations to brochures. But instead of folds, you'll be dealing with page count. The higher the page count, the less flat your book will lay. So using a lighter weight paper like an 80-pound text can counter this. This could be fine for a magazine, but your pages might have some show through. More on that next. For any booklet over 30 pages, it's probably a good idea to switch to a lay-flat binding. Another thing to consider is that thinner papers can show through printing from the other side of the paper, especially if the print on the reverse side has heavy ink saturation. The thinner the paper, the more likely show through is to happen. Any text weight paper is likely to have some show through. On many prints like magazines or catalogs, this isn't an issue, but on posters, fine art prints, and brochures, and more, show-through can negatively affect the quality and readability of the print. If you want to reduce show-through, consider using a paper that's heavier than an 80-pound cover. Last, it's worth mentioning that thicker papers are more expensive. If you're trying to keep cost of your project down, going with a thinner paper will save you some cash. This wraps up our first episode of School of Print Design. In part 1 of the Designer's Guide to Choosing Paper Stocks for Printing, we introduced you to paper types and broke down how paper weight decisions can impact your print designs. Now check out part 2 for all the details on paper color and finish. Then you'll be a paper selection pro. Now if this video helped you understand more about paper stock for printing, give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to the Smartpress YouTube channel so you don't miss out on any of the future episodes. And thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on School of Print Design.